So, in our modern world, the concept of faith is highly charged. And there's a lot of people that will talk about how they don't have faith, or they're not a person of faith, or they are a person of faith. And I think it's really important to make some clear distinctions about what all these things mean, and a little bit of a dive into how the religion of Islam discusses faith. Well, is actually quite eye-opening. Some of the things I'm going to talk about today, if you want to go grab it, is from this book, The Vision of Islam. It is really helpful for those who want a deeper dive into understanding the Muslim worldview and the Islamic faith or religion. But the first thing that we have to do is differentiate between the words faith and belief, because a lot of times when we say, I'm a person of faith, or I don't have faith, or whatever it is, what we really mean is some people believe stuff and other people believe other stuff. And we're actually talking about the term belief, which means that you have confidence that something is true, but it might or might not actually be true. Whereas in Islam, imam is the word for faith, and it means that you only believe things that are absolutely categorically true no matter what. It's confidence that the truth is really true. And if you're having faith or believing in something that isn't true, then it's actually not faith, because it says the object of faith expresses the objective reality of things. Moreover, faith means that when people have this confidence, they commit themselves to acting on the basis of a truth that they know. So we're going to talk about the 3 points of faith, the 3 aspects of faith in the Islamic worldview. And I think it's going to be I really think it's beautiful. So it comes from this quote, something that Muhammad said: faith is a knowledge in the heart, a voicing with the tongue, and an activity with the limbs. So in the Muslim worldview, faith is knowing, speaking, and doing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this because it's really quite fascinating. In fact, this first one, to know in the heart, it was like just kind of like mind-blowing for me when I read it. So the Muslims don't see the heart like oh my gosh, like we've got the Disney thing with the follow your heart, and we think of the heart as the organ of emotions, but they think of the heart as actually a spiritual organ that separates human beings from all other living things. And they refer to this as intelligence or rationality. It's the part of us that recognizes truth. Isn't that cool? Isn't that so cool? And we have to nurture the heart so that we can stay aligned with truth. It says, in the Quranic view of things, a rational animal is an animal with a heart. A human being without a functioning heart is an animal or worse. And I think this is really fascinating just from the standpoint of like the kinds of things that you and I know human beings become capable of are cruelties beyond the animal world. Like they're worse than what animals do to each other, right? So this is actually true, that when the spiritual organ is not really like exercised and nurtured so that it can recognize truth, and you don't know in the heart of spiritual things, then you become less than. It says they are as cattle, or rather they are further astray from the truth. And the way that it talks about the heart in the Quran is it calls it sick or rusted or locked. And so this is why in the MDM Academy at the Mission Driven Mom, we spend a lot of time on the concept of needs, and that we really do have spiritual needs, and we need to fill our spiritual needs. We need to meet those spiritual needs really regularly, because that is the way that we're tuning the heart to be the organ that identifies the truth. And it talks about how in your heart is a sickness. And if your heart isn't nurtured correctly and spiritually ongoing so that it can recognize and live according to truth, you become less than human. So it's really super fascinating. And that's how the first aspect of faith, that you know in the heart. So the second one is that you speak what you know. The human quality of intelligence becomes manifest in rational speech. I want to read this quote to you. It is difficult to overestimate the importance of speech in the Islamic perspective. God himself, think about Genesis, creates the universe through speaking. God provides guidance through speaking through the prophets. The Quran is God's speech to Muslims. Human beings return to God by speaking to him through prayer. And the first pillar of Islam is a speech act to declare there is no God but God and Muhammad is his prophet. And in this way, they see themselves as cooperating in creation. So you are actually not considered a Muslim until you do this first speech act. It's the first act of faith is to say it. And you are actually creating as God does as you say the things that you know, that you recognize that reality is reality and you know what reality is and you align with it. And it's a really sacred thing because God uses words to create, and the power of words is what makes us rational, intelligent, conscious, and conscience-abiding creatures, right? And so you first know in your heart, and then you speak what you know. And then the third thing is that you act on what you know. The Quran says, very hateful is it to God that you say what you do not do. So if you say you believe things and you don't act them out, then you are like not faithful, first of all, but also like becoming worse than a human being because you're such a hypocrite. We have to speak it verbally, and then we have to act on those commitments. Now, this is an important little nuance here. It is possible from the Quranic view that you could obey God's commands, you could do things that God says you should do, but not have faith, not know in your heart. And so when someone during Muhammad's lifetime, a follower claimed that another person's declaration of faith was false. And Muhammad said, did you open the heart and look? And so his message to his followers was, you can't make judgments of that kind. That's between them and God. And we can judge the activity, but we can't judge the contents of the heart. Only people know if they're truly meeting their spiritual needs, if they're truly exercising the organ of the heart, which is the spiritual organ of the human being. And the most important way that we act is through gratitude. Without God's generous giving, they would not exist. Gratitude is the first character trait that people owe to God. So when someone does something nice for you in the Islamic religion, then you say, praise be to God. You don't say thank you. You don't say thank you. You basically say, thank God. And that is an ongoing, daily, regular, ritualistic acknowledgement that we all owe everything that we are to God. Even if you made a decision to do something nice, you could only do that nice thing because of God, and He is the source of all good. So ultimately, it's God that we need to thank. And he says, oh, I love this one. It says, ingratitude appears as the ugliest of human failings. It is to shut one's eyes to the obvious. So for the Muslim, these are self-evident truths. And it goes on to talk about how, like, what do you do if someone says, well, I don't have faith, I don't believe what you believe? Then you would just say, well, it's just because you don't understand, because all I'm doing is speaking reality to you. Like, to say that God is just to acknowledge reality. It's human nature to know that. It is because we are rational creatures that we have always known there was a God, and we still know there's a God. And it's faith to know that, to nurture the heart so that it can really know that, to speak it, and then to act on it. And the most important way that we act is in gratitude. So just to finish up, this reminded me of a story from the Bible that I really loved, where these three aspects of faith are really played out. So of course we all know the story of Moses, and he goes in the wilderness and he comes back and he sets the Israelites free, and they go out in the wilderness, and then they get the manna, and he gets the plates, the commandments from the mountain. And then there's kind of a part 2 to this story. The first part's really famous and we're all pretty, well versed in it. But the second part, I don't know if we're as well versed in it. So what happens next is that God comes to Moses and says, okay, you need a place of spiritual renewal and sacrifice. You need a place where you can go physically and connect with me. And so that's going to be this tabernacle, and you're going to carry it everywhere you go. And there were actually, it's really cool in the Bible, you can read about some of the people that had developed their gifts and talents, and they had consecrated them to God, and they were actually used to produce some of the beautiful things for the tabernacle. So they oversaw the construction, so that's going on. And so in order to build this tabernacle, they need beautiful things. So Moses makes a call. This is a list of all the things that they asked the people to bring. Anybody that had anything was supposed to bring this to those who were overseeing the construction of the tabernacle, so that they could make it beautiful. Gold, silver, brass, blue, purple, and scarlet fine linen, goat's hair, ram skins, badger skins, shittim wood, oil, spices, sweet incense, and onyx stones. And these were all used at different places and for different purposes in the tabernacle. And then in their response to this call, we can see that these grumbling, negative, ungrateful ex-slaves that kind of are a pain in the neck to Moses for so long actually have this really beautiful moment of full faith where they respond in these 3 ways to this call. So God proclaims, whosoever is of a willing heart, bring these to the tabernacle. Here we see the knowing in the heart and the speaking it and the acting with it. They came, everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing, and they brought the Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation. All the women whose hearts stirred them up in wisdom spun. The children of Israel brought a willing offering to the Lord. Every man and woman whose heart was willing to bring for all manner of work which the Lord had commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. They knew in their hearts, they declared openly their faith, and they acted on the truth that they knew. Even some of the workers offered their time and labor for God, for even one whose heart stirred him up unto the word to do it. As Moses gave commandments, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, so this is the end of the story. So they bring it and they bring it and they bring it, and they all have these really abundant, willing hearts, and they're full of faith, and they're going to make real sacrifices and give up some of their most precious items. And it's so much, it becomes too much. And so Moses gives out this declaration, let neither man or woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing, for the stuff they had was sufficient for the work to make it, and too much. So when we truly have faith, we are knowing in our hearts and we are speaking it out. We're having the confidence to say the things that we know, and we're acting in accordance with that and in abundant gratitude to God. Faith is a state of mind and heart that has to do with recognition of truth, commitment to the truth that you recognize, and activity on the basis of your commitment. And so these 3 components of faith are just so beautiful. We all can learn something by them, and to remember how the Quranic view of faith is really such a healthy, whole, honest way of living in accordance of knowing and speaking and living in accordance with the truth that you know. It's a very vital lesson for all of us to try to live better. If you want to know more about this concept of being willing and living by faith and loving God and growing your relationship with Him, you could head over to themissiondrivenmom.com and grab my book, The Mission Driven Life, Discover and Fulfill Your Unique Contribution to the World, because I talk about the importance of natural laws and principles and aligning with reality, but there's a whole chapter on loving God and 3 principles that you can dive deeper into for enriching your relationship with Him. Thanks for joining me.